Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Like Gladys said, depending on where you are. Um, we are here for unlocking the power of reality capture and empowering government initiatives. My name again is Jay Meszar. I'm a solutions consultant here at IMAGINiT, and I've been in the AEC or reality capture space for about 28 years. So it was my 15th anniversary for IMAGINiT this year, so I've been here a little while. I'm a civil 3D professional, as well as working with all of the scanning hardware and software that we have. So I've been working on our reality capture team for about the past 10 years or so. So with all of this time being around IMAGINiT and the AEC space and the reality capture space, I've had the opportunity to come by some really interesting projects that's provided me some good experience with all of this stuff. So as I go through my presentation today, as Gladys mentioned earlier, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A panel, and I will do my best to get them answered. And whatever I can't answer, we will certainly dig in and try to find an answer for you. All right. So what are we going to talk about today? First I'm going to start by talking about what reality capture is. For some of you, you may be very new to this. Some of you may be around a while. And, we'll kind of dig in and figure out what we're talking about when we do talk about the term reality capture, okay? We'll dig into the reality capture hardware, how it operates, using whether it be a terrestrial-based scanner or a drone, or however you're collecting your reality capture data. There's definitely some background that you might want to know about. And, maybe you're sitting on this call and kind of thinking, well, I'm never going to operate any of the hardware. I don't need to know how to do any of that. That very well may be true, but I want you to think about maybe you're the one asking somebody for some reality capture data, some point cloud data. It's a good idea to stick around and figure out, hey, what can this stuff do? Or even what can't it do? And what I'm asking for, is it unreasonable? And feel free to ask those questions. And then we'll talk a little bit about transforming the digital data into design and engineering deliverables. Whether those deliverables might be CAD data, they might be model data, they simply might be you providing some measurements or engineering coordination with a contractor and just creating a markup on some of these this point cloud data can be a very valuable tool. All right, so what is reality capture? At the end of the day, reality capture is just simply anyone going out and trying to figure out what is along the project that they're going to start on, right? Reality capture has been done forever, and what I mean by that is it could be we sent somebody out just to kind of figure out is a piece of wood, yay wide or this big. And what I'm sitting here doing is I'm moving my hands back and forth, right? And so if you can imagine, somebody might have started just trying to figure out a rough estimate of how big something is just by using their hands. And so, of course, we've progressed since then, and those measurements could be collected by any number of instruments. So at the end of the day, reality capture is the process of capturing and recording existing conditions using a variety of instruments. These instruments collected are typically used in an aid of redevelopment of an existing space or to add to an existing location. And so let's take a look at some of the instruments that we might use to collect this data. So right off the top, of course, I'm here with IMAGINiT. we are a reseller of laser scanners and laser scanning software, so that's of course right at the top of my list. Excuse me. So when we talk about a laser scanner, you know, it's interesting to figure out the way that it works and what it can and can't collect. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go forward. Then we have photogrammetry. And photogrammetry, everybody always assimilates photogrammetry to, oh, I got to have a drone to be able to collect photogrammetry. And that's not necessarily true. If you're not familiar with the term, photogrammetry means that you're going to go out and you're going to collect data using anything from your cell phone or possibly even you know, a drone for that matter, or maybe even a high definition camera. And you're taking those photos and turning them into possibly a point cloud or possibly a 3D mesh, or maybe even collecting survey data from it. So line work and points, individual points that we might bring into something like Civil 3D. Of course, there's sonar. You know, typically speaking, the sonar is hanging off the back of a ship. And in my experience with it, I'm sure it's used for many, many other instances. But in my experience, sonar was used for looking to find cable data and mapping the ocean floor to take your internet or your phone cable across the ocean floor to Europe, let's say. Okay. We have ground penetrating radar. It is exactly what it says. It looks, and you'll see a picture of it here in a moment, looks like a lawnmower that simply you run over the ground and it picks up data from there. Then of course we have the old school tape measure, pencil, and a piece of paper. And if you're sitting there thinking I'm making fun of these and you know, kind of putting people into a category, I'm not. Tape measure, pencil, and paper, sometimes it's just easy and fast to get what we want of a small measurement. When we start talking about something larger, well, then we might kind of put you in a category of maybe don't use a tape measure, pencil, and paper to get, let's say, the whole dimensions of a building, for instance. All right. So let's take a look at what some of that equipment might look like. You know, on the left there, of course, you can see the laser scanners, if I could speak. In the middle, photogrammetry, of course, sonar, the ground penetrating radar, and then, of course, at the end of the day, our pencil and paper, as if you didn't know what that looked like, right? All right, so let's talk a little bit about you know, how scanning works and you know, how you might use a mobile device to assist in your collection of data. Right? Well, some scanners are capable of using mobile devices. For instance, some of the Leica scanners are capable of using an iPad or an iPhone or an Android tablet to go ahead and collect data using their Cyclone Field 360 application. This application, again, runs on a mobile device, allows us to log in, connect to a scanner, and simply be able to see what the scanner is collecting in the field. For those of you who maybe haven't had the opportunity to look at the newer scanners that are capable of this, maybe you're using an older scanner that does not, look into this. It's extremely valuable to be able to go out with your scanner, collect the data, and be able to see that data before you ever leave the field. I know in the early days when I started scanning, we would collect the data and go back to the office, and it ended up almost like any other measurement, a tape measure, paper and pencil. We'd get back and go, oh, we missed scanning this area. being able to use a mobile device to assist with that and seeing a representation of that point cloud without, with the pictures and of course all of the point cloud data, you're able to know before you ever leave the site whether or not you have what you need. Okay. Then of course we can talk about a little bit about project planning. And this is something really, if you are the one scanning, you should be taking a look at before you ever leave the office. And you can see what I've got here is a terrible grainy image of a project that I scanned. Okay. This was not intended to be a high definition scan or a high definition picture. This was intended to give me a rough idea of what I'd be running into when I got to the site. This was simply downloaded from the web as, again, it's a very grainy image, but what I can do with it is start figuring out in the office that, hey, excuse me, I'm gonna place scan 1 right here. And then as I go, I'm gonna place then scan 2 in here, and then maybe scan 3 there, and so on, scan 4, right? And then I know before I get back to the office how my puzzle pieces, as I like to refer to them, fit together. Scan 1 goes with scan 2, scan 3 goes with scan 4, I'm sorry, scan 2 with scan 3, and then scan 3 with scan 4. And of course, this seems like a very, duh, you're just going in order. But there are times where I would collect data from that would only go with scan 2, but I might be on scan whatever, 57, and have to stitch that data together. So it's a good workflow to plan out our project planning in the office before we ever leave. And if it doesn't go as planned, which not everything does, that's okay. We can adjust it out in the field. All right. So when it's complete, I might look something like this, where I have all of my scans and they're all stitched together. By the way, that stitching process is called registration if you're unfamiliar. And all of that registration, again, if you're maybe a person that's been around this a little while and not familiar with the new stuff, we can do all of what you see here right in the field so that we're not spending extra time in the office trying to remember where everything went. Okay. Now, again, if you're super new to this, something that you might think about is, how does this scanner work? Well, of course, in the lower left corner here, you see the scanner. And that scanner, when we hit go and tell it to start scanning, it starts shooting that laser and collecting individual point data. Okay, so that individual point data ends up turning into a point cloud, which is what, of course, you see here.
Here's what I found.
Whoops. And so the point cloud is what we can end up creating measurements from. So one of the big questions that comes up for a lot of people is, all right, I need point cloud data, but what do I ask for? I don't know what these things are capable of. Well, at the beginning, of course, you're asking for point cloud data, right? I mean, everybody wants the point cloud data. Well, another thing that you might ask for is supplemental data. You see in the picture on this slide that there's a red circle at the bottom center of the screen. A lot of these scanners today are capable of collecting supplemental project data, such as pictures, videos, text, and documents. And you see that little teardrop icon down there that's in the red circle is what Leica refers to as a geotag. And that geotag is just simply a picture I took while I was out there scanning this bridge. So I have supplemental data attached to my point cloud. So go ahead and ask for this stuff, right? Ask somebody to collect it. And if you ask them, they're more than likely going to be able to give you this. And of course, the benefit here is that the geotags, or the pictures, the videos, the text, can all be placed in the correct location within the point cloud. And so you're no longer walking out there by yourself with a cell phone, collecting a bunch of pictures that you're not sure where they go to, and then saying, okay, well, I get back to the office, I plug my phone in to get all the pictures, and I don't really remember where all this went to. So it's in the point cloud, it's in the correct spot. So you'll never forget what that picture was of. And then of course, the other thing you want to ask for is, do I need my point cloud on survey control? If so, you better ask for that early, so before they start scanning, they know whether to set up survey control and match the point cloud data to it. Now, when we talk about this and we talk about what these are capable of, we have to remember that the laser coming out of a point cloud, or sorry, laser coming out of a scanner, is collecting a point on a solid surface. That means that that laser does not go through a solid surface to find another, right? I mean, that seems obvious, but we want to state that. And so anytime it hits a solid object, anything behind that object is considered casting a shadow. And so we have to move the scanner along to find anything that goes behind an object that we might want to collect. The result is a complete 3D point cloud. And you might be looking at this going, what a mess, right? There's so much data here. I don't need all that data. All I wanted was that bridge I showed in an earlier slide. Well, my point in showing this to you is that we do collect a ton of data. And sometimes that's a great thing. And sometimes it's not a great thing. Okay? And we have to figure out what we want and what we don't want. Any of these points that you see here can be removed and can be deleted, or at the very minimum, hidden. All right, so one of the questions I get a lot about all of this is, what do I do with a point cloud? So many people ask that question. I've got it, I was provided a point cloud by somebody. I don't know this file format is something that I hear a lot. I don't know what to do with a point cloud. Where do I put it? Where does it go into AutoCAD? Where do I view it? Right? And so what we want to be asking for so that we can get those engineering deliverables is a file format that's read by a software that's available to most users. Giving you an example would be an LGS file provided by Leica Geosystems. We can view that in a free viewer that anybody can download from their website. Another example, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, is an RCP or RCS file. That's an Autodesk recap file. Okay? And then, of course, you need that viewer to download. Again, the Leica one is free, so that's a pretty easy download. And then, of course, we can create measurements to design from. If all we're looking for is to figure out, will something fit, we can create those measurements. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is I'd like to go ahead and demonstrate for you how one of these scanners work. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to pull this down here like this, okay? And what you're looking at here is, this is my iPad, okay? And so with my iPad, I can go ahead and I'm going to, well, before I get there, let me actually do this way. Bear with me just one moment. I'm not sure how I'm going to do this. Let's try. Okay. And so you should hopefully bear with me one second while my camera gets up and running here. There we go. And so what we're looking at here, again, is my iPad. And if you look at my webcam here, you can see over my left shoulder here, I've got an RTC 360. And over my right shoulder here, I've got a BLK 360. And so you can see that the BLK is turned on. I've got this green light on it. And I'm going to show you kind of how this scanning process works just by doing a quick scan through my home here. So when I open this Field app and I say to create a project, I can create this project and give it a name. Okay, and I'm going to save that. And now I can go into the project. Whoops, let me back that up. Connect my scanner first, my mistake. And of course, my technology doesn't want to work for me right this second. Bear with me. Bear with me just one second. Let me go and close everything out because okay. Now we can try and go in here. There we go. We're running. And so I can come in and I can run my scanner simply by saying that I want to run. I'll do a quick low density scan here and maybe some quick low pictures. And I'm just going to hit play. And if you look over my right shoulder here, you can see that the scanner has started to spin and it's completing a scan. We have a quick picture, and within 24 seconds, this scanner is going to have a complete point cloud. And I'm going to see that in my field application. All right, so the scan's complete, and if we're looking at the iPad, we can turn the camera off here a second and focus on the iPad and say that we want to take a look at our scan. So I can take a look at this in the field, and you can see me there in my office, and I can spin that around. Now, what I'm going to do is take that scanner and move it slightly. Now you'll see that on my iPad here, I'm seeing a red blinking dot, and hopefully that's blinking for you. That's showing me the location of this scanner. So I know where I started scanning and I know where I am. And so we can go ahead and scan again. Now, I've got my second scan, and as I said earlier, I can stitch these together or register these together simply by hitting a quick link button, and now I have two scans that go together. And I can continue going on and going on and going on. Something else that we can do is we can click on an individual scan and we can look at its 360-degree photograph. And so remember earlier I was talking about collecting supplemental data. Well, some of that supplemental data could simply be me going in and creating a picture of my RTC 360. And I'll say, I want to use that photo. And as I mentioned earlier, I can attach this in the point cloud so that when I import that data comes in and I can look at those pictures. Okay, and then of course, we can go on and on and on, scanning our entire project, providing ourselves with point cloud data. Now, one of the things that, you may look at this and kind of say, well, that's not as many points as I had expected. And you would be correct. You know, because I'm using a mobile device, it's not going to load all of the points collected. So I'm getting a representation of what that final point cloud looks like. And then when I import it to the computer, I'll see the full point cloud. All right. And so I'm going to then take that and we're going to move that out of the way. And I'm going to open the registration software. And I know, again, I know some of you are thinking, well, I'm never going to do this. That's perfectly fine if you're not going to collect the data. But again, you will know now what is possible. And so you can ask for something and know what you're asking for. So when I look at this data inside inside the software, of course, I would have already imported at this point, just kind of catch you up. Sometimes the data is large and I've got almost 15 scans here or so. So I'm not going to do an import on this webinar. Will just simply take too long. But I can come in and I can look at my point cloud in 3D. And we can wheel around and figure out where we might add new data. And so we can then click on each individual scan and we can view the 360-degree pictures from that data. If measurements are what we need, we can simply come in and create a measurement. Okay, so we have all of this. And now let's just say for For argument's sake, you asked for that supplemental data I mentioned earlier, and for whatever reason, somebody forgot to pick it up. That's okay, because you could take any pictures that you did take from your cell phone, or to any pictures that you might have found on the internet or whatever, and you can come in and you can create those geotags anytime you need to, just right here in the software. You don't have to have a scanner. Okay. All right. So once we're done in here, we're going to end up exporting our data out into a format that people can use. Again, we want people to be able to look at this, and those formats you can see here. Now, different scanners provide different formats, but ultimately, you know, these are some generic type formats. This is the Autodesk format, RCP, and then of course this is a like a workflow format. And so now let's move on to, okay, you get the point cloud. Somebody's already done all of this for you. What do you do with it? What kind of deliverable can you create from this? Well, the very simple deliverable that we might create is coming into that free software I mentioned and looking at our data. Now, again, remember that this is a free software. And so we can come in here and look at this LGS point cloud data. And once again, we can take simple measurements. But beyond simple measurements, you might decide, I really want to turn these things off, first of all. Well, actually, let's just go in here like this, right? And then the deliverable might simply be something for somebody to take on site and use as a reference. And if that's the case, we can create what we call a snapshot and then take and create dimensions. You can place simple things like notes. Whoops, I don't want that one. And then maybe even decide, hey, at the top of this, I'm going to place some text. Okay, so we have all kind of options here. Anybody who has the free viewer, if there is a geotag created, well, they can go ahead and they can look at that geotag. And then ultimately, if they have model data can be dragged in here and placed over top. I don't happen to have one for this data set, but model data can be dragged in and placed over top of this. If we really want to get fancy with this, we can take it and put it into some VR goggles. Or if we simply want to give somebody the idea of what it's like to walk around this space, oops, we may come in here and start right about, let's say, right in here. and we may record a video. Okay, and so when we go to record the video, we start walking around the space. And I can speed this up or slow it down as I walk through the space. Stop. And now I have an MP4 file out on my hard drive that I can email or put into Dropbox or what have you. Now, the last thing I want to show here quickly is what happens if you're using something like Revit or AutoCAD. One of the things that we can do is to come in and clip our point cloud. And you can see that I'm now looking at a floor plan of my entire point cloud. And then I can use some available tools to adjust that clip, move it up, move it down, whatever I feel I need to do, right? And then start clicking on individual walls and let's just say we go to right here and I'm decide that that's all I want to model for now. I can hit end that polyline and I can send that over to Revit using my levels, using a wall thickness and a side. And when I click OK, I can then close my dialog box. Whoop, and Revit minimized. Awesome. There we go. And I now have model data from my point cloud. So there are a number of things that we can do with this point cloud data to simply get information or model from it, or use it to our advantage, as opposed to a tape measure and a pencil and piece of paper, right? If I had somebody gave me all the measurements for this building, I would have a very difficult time closing this building with those measurements. If you've ever tried it, you know what I mean. So that's kind of where I'm going to stop today. I'm going to allow some questions here. I'm going to move this up and push this down and push this out of the way. And, of course, feel free to put your questions in the Q&A panel. And just want to remind everyone that next week, we're having another webinar to continue with this topic and talk about, we'll talk a little bit more about modeling from the point cloud data. We'll talk about point cloud storage, and just provide you some more information.